Yeah, you mentioned a balance between the Ahamoku, the traditional practice, and what the other side has to offer. Name some things that they have offered.
I'm talking more on the scientists. I deal with a lot of scientists, environmentalists. We all have different practices. Some of the Western ways, I mean, I get so many groups come to my office and talk to me, and it's just educating, and we gotta work together. We all live together, you know, and one way is not the only way. But we first of all gotta recognize that there are best practices, and I come from Hawaiians. We're fruitful once upon a time. Why aren't we looking at how they used to do things? You know, why are we just ignore? And I've seen the department just ignore some of those practices. It's offensive. I mean, I sit through testimonies and hear some of the things they say, and they're actually not saying good things about Native Hawaiians, and I get offended. But of course, I have to put that smile on and ask the hard questions. My point is, we don't recognize some of the practices that are still occurring because it's who's in charge, you know? So this just brings the voice to the table, but we still gotta learn how to agree to disagree, but look at what is the best practice for that community, because I'm telling you, if we ever get cut off from the rest of the world, we all gotta fend for ourselves. That's the facts.
Maybe, I don't think you answered the question. I think I said, what does the other side have to offer? Because what you're saying to us is that the Ahamoku would work. But the other side, you know, what do they have that will work too?
Well, that's a good question, because to some degree I'm not sure, okay? I see where you're coming from. And that's the point we try to make when trying to explain to the people in charge. But it's hard when they already see that this doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? I know what you're saying. I just don't know how to answer that question. But you got a good point. You know, what do they have to offer?
I mean, if we're going to the past,
and practices.
And the other side is basically the future. How do you reconcile both sides?
Well, you know what's very interesting? There was a bill to do the same thing that the Ahamoku would do, but it was all for scientists and teachers at the university. And they wanted $800,000 in that bill, where we just asked for $110,000. And many of my constituents who did come and see me, and I explained to them about this bill, I said, look, same language, want to do the same thing, use the same practices that they're saying about Hawaiians. But they ask you for more money, and yet a lot of our Hawaiian people were willing to do it for free. You know what I'm saying? So I hear what you're saying. It's not an easy subject, but this is a start to bring forward what our kupunas value, and so that they trust to share, and that information will pass on to generation and not be diluted. You know, because you talk to some families and they don't even know what the ancestors used to do because of what they're told. You know how the telephone game? You talk to one person and the story changes each time and so forth. So this is just a start, but that's a good point. And I'm really not sure how to really answer that question, but I can only tell you that there are many people trying to use the model, trying to use the same language, but it's really not the same. It's just pushing your agenda.
So just going back to, essentially if the developer does want to develop on land, they do have to get an EIS. Do they always? Usually. So there are cases where they don't have to get an EIS.
Well, let me just tell you this. When the super fair was coming, I introduced a bill to have them do an EIS. And my bill said, no, go figure that one. I mean, you guys have been hearing it throughout. So I don't know the specifics to the development, but I would ask the developer.
If asked
usually,
now, they're going to play up by
usually,
whether or not. Okay.
You know, when you're saying that you introduced a resolution for the Mele and stuff, and then if you were to work with the Angus County, what would you need from us, like the community? Like what kind of steps, what kind of things could we start doing right now?
You can
before.
start getting people's email addresses, because I know for me, when I introduce bills, I send out my notifications. So if you're on my email list, I let you know when bills are being heard, bills that are important to my district or my bills, and it gives you time to actually write testimony and just where to send it. And my office, what we do is, sometimes we have components that cannot write, yeah? So they tell us what, and we type it up, we don't sign it, we just put their name and their phone number, so if anybody wants to call them, they can. And we submit it for them. We do a little extra in my office, but you can work with Angus. I'm not sure if he does a notification, but I do. And if it's a bill that I'm going to introduce, you can be sure I'm going to send out that notification. So that's one. Two, get testimony ready. I would say get it ready before it even happens. And 3 phone calls.
We know that the reef is dying. They've done studies that the reef is dying. Those studies being enough to present where we can show that it's critical that the stream is restored now. But the problem with the reef dying is that the sediment is dying, laying on the coral, and it has nowhere to go, so it dies. The sediment is killing it. The stream will flush the baby back out. And until they restore the water, the reef is just going to keep dying. Pretty soon, we're not going to reach all of the gas. And is there a way to fast track getting that stream flow restored? Save it before it's gone.
I don't know about fast track, but all I know is through the process that I went through was that RESA will help bring the attention to the department to do something about it. You really got to work with your senator and your rep to help you push this through, because it makes a difference. Seriously. I can tell you that DLNR this past session came before us to ask for monies for inflow stream standard studies. They did ask us for money, yeah. I was surprised. This is when Peter Young was still the director. But see, I was one of them during my 05-06 session that I was in his face all the time. And then when he came before me in finance, I was like, hallelujah. I mean, you know, it takes time to bring the attention to the department, but I was just happy that he had it in his budget request. That's a step forward, you know, so it takes awareness, educating, and working with your legislators. And I think it's great that you guys invite other legislators to speak to you. That's all part of it too. It's the only way we're going to know what you guys need in your district, because we vote on your stuff too.
Mele, I believe that the Honolua Bay is a protected area. Am I correct? Yet we see commercial boats in there, anchored, more than one. Whose responsibility